You are live.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the El Paso County Democratic Party Second Tuesday Showcase. I'm Amy Paschal. I'm the first vice chair of your Democratic Party. Tonight, we are going to talk about ballot measures. I think we can proceed, yeah. So what's on your ballot? State, county, and local measures. Here's a little bit about me. I am an activist, a wife, and a mother of two smart, beautiful children who are away at college. I don't have any dogs right now, which makes me sad, but I'll be getting new ones soon. I'm a refugee from the software industry. That's what I used to do for a living. Now I use all that extra time and energy and technical skills volunteering for the El Paso County Democratic Party as first vice chair and as precinct organizer to precinct 315 up here in Monument. I also work for the county elections department. I've been an election judge working in the polls many times. And right now I am the canvass board member for the Democratic Party for the second time. So we just spent last week doing the logic and accuracy test, which is testing the counting machines. So we're getting things revved up for the election. So I'm hoping you all have your ballot by now. If not, it should be coming very soon. They were mailed out last Friday. What else on this slide? My favorite hobbies are arguing politics on Facebook. Yes, I do that a lot. I love playing in the snow and any kind of outdoor stuff with my fam. And if you live in my household, you are going to learn to ski and love skiing. There's my two kidlets. This is a pretty old picture. That little boy there is now 5'10" and he's in college. And both of them are in college. My daughter is about to graduate. So that's enough about me. We are going to have Brooklyn speak to us a little bit about the technology of Zoom in case you need a refresher.
Awesome. So hello, everyone. My name is Brooklyn, and I'm just going to run you through a few of the things you'll see at the bottom of your screen so you know how to participate in tonight's event. So we won't really be using the unmute or start video until it's opened up for questions and for the discussion at the end. So when that time comes, at the left of the bottom of your screen, you will see a little microphone or a telephone, depending on how you're using, what audio you're using. And that's how you unmute to go ahead and ask a question of our presenters. And you can also start your video if you would like to be seen when you ask a question as well. You can click on the participants to see who is in tonight's event. You can also use that chat bubble that's next to participants to ask a question or chat with each other during the event. And then I don't think we'll be using breakout rooms tonight, but in case we do, okay, I didn't think so. And then if you want to react to something, you can go ahead and use that reactions to clap and cheer our presenters on, or any of those other fun reactions. So if you have any questions for us on the tech team, go ahead and use that chat bubble and you can ask us there.
Okay, thanks, Brooklyn. So as I mentioned before, we're going to talk about ballot measures, a little bit of state, county, and local measures. These are the measures we're going to cover. There's three state measures, 78, 119, and 120. We're going to have Judy Solano talking about those. We have one at the county level, 1A, Colorado Springs, 2C and 2D. And then the Colorado Springs School District 11, 4B. So those are the ones we're going to talk about tonight. It's not everything that's potentially on your ballot in El Paso County. But hopefully we'll hit the major items that most people are interested in hearing about. So the format we're going to use is we'll have a presentation about one of the measures, and then we'll open it up for questions for 5 minutes or so about that measure, and then move on to the next measure. So that's how we're going to work. Just to give you a little bit of an intro, I thought I'd share with you some information about how to find out more about the election. You have certainly come to the right place to learn more. This is our website, the front page of our website. You can see the website URL right there. And when you get a copy of the slides after this meeting, that will be a hot link that you can click on. So this is what our front page looks like. If you go to election, excuse me, if you go to election 2021, you'll see this drop-down menu. These are all the pages we have about the election. One has information about timeline, some various facts about how to vote, how to find the drop boxes, when the voter service and polling centers, also known as VSPCs, are open and where they're at. When you need to get your ballot mailed, all that sort of thing. Then we drop into the candidates. We have a page on our candidates for Fountain Mayor, our school board candidates, and then a lengthy page about the ballot measures. It will be all the ballot measures that could be on your ballot in El Paso County. And then I have another page called research sources that have where to find the PDF copy of the Blue Book online. This is a picture on the left here of what our Blue Book looks like. And where to find the County Tabor notice online. That's the other document you can see on the screen. And I also have links to voter guides and all kinds of newspaper and other media stories about the various ballot measures and candidates. So hopefully you can find all the research that you might want to do there. And let's see, that's it for this page. Oh, the other thing is that, the other thing on that page is that you can go and register to vote or update your registration. You can go there and just click on that link that says click here or scan that QR code. It is not too late to update your registration and still get a ballot in the mail. You have until October 25th. You probably will not have time to mail it back. You'll need to put it in a drop box, but you can still get your ballot. Or if you haven't registered or updated your registration by that date, you can still go into a VSPC and get a ballot and get your registration updated. We have same-day registration in Colorado, so it's not too late. Even the last day of the election is not too late. Okay, go ahead, Ultra. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm just going to talk a little bit about common terms having to do with measures that you may wonder about or you may have heard and you're not sure what they mean. One question that came up into my mind was, what is a measure versus an issue versus a question? Are they all the same thing, just different words for the same thing, or do they actually mean something different? So it turns out a ballot measure is the term for any thing that's on your ballot that is asking you a yes or no question to vote on it. It includes issues and questions. A ballot issue is any measure that is about Tabor, that is Tabor related. And anything else at the county and below level is going to be called a question. When you're up at the state level, your measures are called amendments or propositions. An amendment is a ballot measure that, if passed, will change the Colorado Constitution. That an amendment requires 55% of the vote to pass. A proposition, if passed, will change Colorado statutory law. A proposition requires just a majority to pass. So we have one amendment on the ballot, which is 78. And two propositions, 119 and 120. Those three are all at the state level. You might also wonder, what is an initiative versus a referendum? An initiative is a ballot measure that was initiated by the people, the citizens of the state, and got onto the ballot by collecting signatures. A referendum is a ballot measure that is referred to the people by some governing body, such as the state legislature, the city government, or the county commission. And just a little bit more information here. Where can I find the state amendments and the propositions? I mentioned the Blue Book before. There's a link to the Blue Book, which is also on our website. There's also a link to the Colorado Secretary of State's website where you can find the Blue Book and other information about elections. And then where can I find information about the county and jurisdictions that are within the county? Those will all be in the El Paso County Tabor Notice. It's a little confusing because it's not called a Blue Book, it's called a Tabor Notice. That can be found on the Clerk and Recorder's website. And I believe it only contains things that are Tabor related. And last but not least, one of the questions I had is, why are some of the measures on the ballot in all caps? Why are they screaming at me? This is because by law, Tabor measures have to be in caps. So this is all the research I was doing last week when I was at the elections department, working on testing the counting machines. In downtime, I was peppering Angie Leith with questions about the elections. So next up, we have our first speaker who is going to talk about ballot measures. We have Judy Solano. She is chair of the Advocates for Public Education Policy. She is a retired elementary teacher. She's been a Colorado State representative and vice chair of the House Education Committee and a member of the Early Childhood Commission. She is the current chair of the Advocates for Public Education Policy, which is a nonprofit formed to protect public education. Welcome, Judy. Thanks for being here. There you go.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the El Paso Democrats. I'm a proud member of the Adams County Democrats. So it's great to see some other people on board here and willing to listen to what I have to say about the things that are going to be on the ballot. So I guess the first one we're talking about is Amendment 78. An amendment is a change to the Constitution. And what Amendment 78 deals with is how we spend and who has the authority to spend funds that come into the state, such as federal funds. They're called custodial funds. And they're usually funds for emergency purposes, like the flood that we had or the fires that we've had. We get these custodial funds that come usually from the federal government. Sometimes gifts and donations come in as well, but they're for a specific purpose. And what happens is they go right to the executive branch of the government, and that's the governor, and he takes that money and decides how it should be spent. And all the money that comes in has a specific purpose. So to give you an idea of this, the money came in for the coronavirus relief issues. And there's been several rounds of that. And so the governor decides how to use those funds, and it's overseen by the Attorney General as well as the state treasurer. So there is oversight. And what this would do is they can use these funds immediately. And we need to use them immediately, usually because they're for some kind of emergency purpose or a specific reason why we're getting these funds. So what would Amendment 78 would change all of that. It would allow for only an annual appropriation of those funds. So you couldn't use them immediately when you get them. It would have to go through a legislative process. So the legislature would have to decide how those funds were going to be used. Now, that sounds really good that, that they're going to have the legislature have some kind of say in that. But you have to remember that the legislature only meets January through May. And so if these funds come in July, you would have to wait until the next January when the legislature was meeting to disperse these funds, as well as you'd have to have a special session. I mean, an alternative to that would be to have a special session, which is very costly. And it takes time to go through the House and then to go through the Senate and then to have the governor sign this. So it's a very slow process to do that. We've been doing this for years, and I personally don't see any reason to change. I think this was brought on because there were some disgruntled Republicans that were upset about how Governor Polis used the coronavirus funds. So that's about all I have on that one. So Proposition 119, seems to be the most controversial one.
Hey, Judy, could
Yes.
we open it up to see if there's anybody that has?
Yes, I was,
78?
yes, please do.
Doesn't look like it. Okay, go ahead. It doesn't look like we have any questions.
Okay, and I just want to caution everybody, it's a big deal to change our constitution, and that 78 would be an amendment to our constitution, and I don't see that this is this issue is a real problem. Okay, so are we ready for Proposition 119?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great. I'll let the next slide roll. All right. Proposition 119 would create an independently run agency in our government called the Learning Enrichment Academic Progress Program, LEAP. And our analysis is that, as Amy said, I'm the chair of Advocates for Public Education Policy, and we studied this, our board studied this quite extensively. And we believe it's a scam. And that's basically what it said at the opening slide there. It proposes to provide after-school learning opportunities for children. And it does nothing at all for the underfunding of our public schools. You're creating this new government bureaucracy that would have a budget twice the size of the Colorado Department of Education. And the way it would be funded is it would increase the sales tax on marijuana. Right now it's at 15%, and it would increase it another 5% over 3 years, up to 20%, and that's just state taxes. And so we're not talking about municipal and county taxes and all that that's added on. But anyway, we'll get to that later. So it would create this independently run agency called a Type 1 transfer agency, and they can operate totally on their own. There's other ones in our government, but this one is, this is pretty alarming to us because they're also funding it through a transfer or a diversion of state land trust funds. And if you know anything about state land trusts, they were established in 1876. The federal government gave every state some lands to be set aside for public schools. And we get the revenue from timber sales, oil and gas, renewable energy, grazing, and agriculture. And that money goes into this trust and it's inviolate. You cannot use that revenue, but you can use the interest off of it. And the interest is to go to public schools. What this LEAP agency would do is take $20 million every year off of the interest, and they would redirect it or reallocate it to this new LEAP agency, which would be run by an unelected board that could make up their own rules, change their rules, and they can choose who's going to be the providers for these after-school programs. So it's very, very concerning. We can go on to the next slide. Okay, so I think I've talked a little bit about a couple of these already, but so not only would it be taking money away from our public schools for this new LEAP agency that could operate on its own, have an unelected board, and choose who would qualify or be certified for these programs. So let's say I wanted to start a tutoring company, and I go to the LEAP board and I say, I want to start a tutoring company, and they have to certify me. And then I can start collecting money from parents that get a $1,500 stipend for my services. And so this is a violation of the state constitution, because that money would not be going to public schools. So it would be going to private providers. So that's a real concern, as well as how the agency would actually implement this program and how it would operate. It would get approximately $137 million of marijuana tax right now. And it would take money from our state land trust. So it would have a budget larger than the Department of Education. Our organization feels like it's not only unconstitutional, but it's unnecessary. This would be like creating a whole nother Department of Education to address one issue, and that's learning loss. Right now, the Colorado received $510 million from the federal government through the Coronavirus Relief Fund. That money went into CDE, and 95% of that money was dispersed to all of the school districts in Colorado, where they got to choose through their local board and their professional educators how to use that money. Some are using them to hire teachers. Some of them are using it to create better internet access, especially our rural districts. But they're using these, and some of them are reinstating the programs they had to cut because of their budget concerns. So they're using it in a way that addresses the unique needs of their student population. If LEAP passes, they would get to choose, well, we think we need this tutoring program available to parents, and we think we need that program available to parents. And to be honest with you, this is what we call a quasi voucher, because it's taking public school money and it's putting it in the hands of private providers. The board would have the ability to certify these providers, and whatever that means is very unclear in the language. What does it mean to certify? And, you know, the Colorado Department of Education certifies or licenses teachers. It's just like you'd have these two different agencies doing the same thing. Why aren't we, if we're going to collect marijuana taxes, which we already do, and which is sent to Colorado Department of Education for some school programs, why do we need this LEAP program? We can collect those taxes, send them in through CDE, and they can disperse them to the districts. And why are we using money that should never be used for anything but public schools? There's so much to this one. If you all got your blue book, have you taken a look? It's 14 pages long. And another thing that disturbs us is that the children that would be eligible for these programs are children between the ages of 5 and 17 that are eligible for public school. Doesn't say they have to be enrolled in public school. So homeschooled kids, private school kids could access it, but undocumented students could not, because there's a provision in our statutes that said non-citizens cannot access public benefits, and the taxes used for this would be a public benefit. I don't want to take up all the time on this, but I'm really encouraging you all to take a really good look at this. And we are a definite no. And this has been very controversial. You may have heard seen ads now on TV that this was not done by a grassroots organization. This is done by very wealthy out-of-state backers that are looking at how to make more money and off of public education and actually weaken our system. This is a red flag and it's a scam. And I encourage everyone to vote no and tell all your family and your friends to do the same thing. Unfortunately, the opposition are, we're in the opposing side of this. We don't have a lot of money, but we're trying to be as visible as we can. This is a list of a lot of the people that have signed on to our opposition that are opposing it. And I was talking to you about that state land trust. They have a board that takes care of oversees those funds. And they voted unanimously to oppose this, as well as our state treasurer. And you can see a list of all the organizations and the people that are opposing this. But the support side has a lot of money by wealthy backers. And so don't be fooled. Don't be deceived. This is a really bad thing. And we hope that we can defeat it by getting your help to get the message out.
We do have a few questions in the chat.
Okay, let me look at that.
Or I'll just read them out so everyone can
Okay.
hear it, because some people are on the phone, they can't see that. So the first question is, who assigns people to the board of this agency? Is it the governor?
Yes, they are appointed by the governor. And what's interesting is that once they've served out their term, then they get to recommend who should sit in place of them. And that's really concerning, even though they say other citizens can apply, but it's and you never know. I mean, we might like who Governor Polis appoints, but he's not going to be our governor forever. So that's a real concern. And we have, our Colorado Department of Education has the State Board of Education, which is an elected board. So we get to choose who sits on our state board.
So there's a follow-up question to that. How long is the term?
I believe it's 4 years, but I'd have to go back and look at it. But it says in the Blue Book, it has all of that information about how long their terms are and everything.
Okay, so there's another question that says, you said this budget would be twice as much as which organization?
The LEAP program or the LEAP agency would have a budget twice the size of the Colorado Department of Education. It would be bigger than our Colorado Department of Education.
Wow. Okay. And then the last question I'm seeing here is, could this be used to insert religious views into the school system?
Yes, we're very concerned about that. In fact, we were on a forum with the supporting side and that question came up. Would religious organizations be able to be providers? And they said yes. Now, in the initiative, in the language, in your ballot, in your Blue Book, I mean, it says that they can't discriminate against religion, or they can't discriminate against any kid or any religious organization, or it has a whole list of things. However, it also says in there that on page 29 of your Blue Book, section 7B, it says that notwithstanding notwithstanding anything in this section, no person has a cause of action. I don't know if I quite said that exactly right, But what cause of action means in legal terms is that you can't sue them. So they're shielded from any kind of lawsuit. So the board, the agency itself, the providers would be shielded from any lawsuit. So if I had a child in one of these programs and something horrible happened, if there was some kind of bad action or unscrupulous behavior by any of the providers, I can't sue them. And I think they put that in there because I think they know that there's probably going to be a discrimination suit brought when you're talking about dealing with a church that can hold tutoring service or something like that. It's just a can of worms.
Okay, I am not seeing any more questions or any hands up. So go ahead and move on to, excuse me, the next one.
Okay, this talks about Proposition 120, and the title is Decreases Property Taxes, which sounds really good. And so, as you can see on the screen, it would decrease property taxes from 7.15% to 6.5% for multi-family units. So those are apartments. And it also decreases property taxes from 29% to 26.4% for lodging properties. So what this means is the decrease in properties would only be for apartments and for hotels, motels and hotels. We can go on the next slide. This does not mean that if you're a homeowner that your taxes would your property taxes would decrease. The legislature, I think that's on the next slide, but we're not in favor of a decrease in property tax because it affects your local school funding and it affects your fire departments, especially. Colorado has the third lowest property tax rate in the nation. And right now, when it started, the original school finance formula was 50-50. It was 50% local government and 50% state government would share in the funding of schools. And now it is 66% state share and 34% local share. So our state budget is so strained as it is now that you would have to take something away in the budget if this passes to accommodate for the lost revenue that we would get from property taxes. So I think the next slide, we already talked about that. But the second bullet point here is about the revenue, the loss of revenue to local government. And it would just get worse as time went on. Now, is there another slide on this one?
The one that's up for the permanent nature of the cuts.
Okay, yeah. So once taxes are cut, because of Tabor, you have to go back to a vote of the people to raise your taxes. So it'd be very difficult to reinstate the original taxes. And then the state would have to backfill whatever the local school districts couldn't do. So this would affect the needs of other needs of the state. And so what happened the last few days of the state legislature, Senate Bill 293 was passed. And they anticipated that this was going to be on the ballot. And the Democratic legislators said, we just can't have this on the ballot where there's going to be such a drop in property taxes. So what they did is they changed the categories. This is a little complicated. And so they changed the categories of what property taxes were going to, which property taxes were going to be affected. And so they were able to only have apartment buildings and lodging affected. So we're encouraging a vote no on this one as well. This next one just it kind of explains that it just talks about the different categories that they defined in the last few days of the legislature. I just want to say one thing before we leave is all three of these are not good for our state. And this, just so you know, that the Colorado Democratic Party did take a vote on Proposition 119, and they voted pretty overwhelmingly to oppose it. And it is probably the most controversial one on the ballot. And I just tell people too, that especially with 119, if you've got 13 pages to read that's going to go into our state statute, that ought to be like, oh my gosh, what is happening here? And if you read it and you don't understand it, don't vote for it, because it's got, I could probably talk on this for a lot longer, but I know your time is precious tonight. I'm just encouraging you all to vote no, especially on 119, and really all three of them should go down. And that's the opinion of our organization, Advocates for Public Education Policy. I must say that I am representing them. Just if you have any questions, please let me know.
I'm not seeing any additional questions or hands up. Please, Chandra or Brooklyn, speak up if I'm missing something. I just wanted to also note, and I will say this later, that as you said, the Colorado Democratic Party, the Central Committee voted, and we all voted no on all three of the state measures, pretty, as Judy said, pretty emphatically. There's also, I put this in the chat, there's a article from the Gazette of all places that came out a couple of days ago that covers the measures, and it includes information about where the spending on those measures came from. And there's a lot of dark money, out of state stuff going on there. So that's certainly worth looking at. I put that in the chat. It's also on the Democrats, El Paso County Democratic Party website for the election under research sources. There's a bunch of articles I have there. So that's certainly worth checking out. Okay, well, thank you so much, Judy. We really appreciate your time. You obviously done a lot of research on these topics, especially 119. So we very much appreciate the information, because some of this stuff is not straightforward. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Do you need me to stay on?
If you wish, if there's any more questions maybe that people have, but
I'll be happy. I'll be happy to do that.
Okay, but if you need to get going, that's fine too. I would understand.
It's okay.
So let's move on to the next slide. Walter, are you there? Chandra, can you tell if Ultra's on?
So
Uh-oh.
Chandra has, her screen has frozen.
Uh-oh, and I think we just lost Ultra also.
Okay, so we'll take a quick pause so Chandra can exit and
Oh,
come back.
looks
in.
like she came back.
Okay,
And I'm back also.
I
Okay,
don't know
great.
what just happened, but yeah, everything frozen, and then we just got kicked in and out. So there you go.
All right, everything went to, you know, where in a handbasket. Okay. All right, oh, this is my slide. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the El Paso County measures. There's only one. It's been referred to us by the county commission. It's ballot measure 1A. Thanks. This measure is yet another Tabor retention measure. There's a lot of them on the ballot, by the way, especially as you go further down ballot. So this one is about retaining revenue that exceeds the current Tabor limitations, but is no greater than the county revenue cap. It would start in 2021 and would continue indefinitely. So this is a permanent change. The first 15 million is to be spent on roadway improvements and preservation and on parks projects. It doesn't specify where anything beyond 15 million would go. I put a link in there to the resolution from the county commission. It gives a little bit more detail on the measure. But that is all I know about that. So if anybody has any questions, I can give a crack at it, but otherwise we will move ahead to the next one. Uh-oh. Did we lose Ultra again? Oh, was there a hand that went up? There's a hand that's up. Okay, hang on. There's a question. That's fine though. Jane Wallace, go ahead with your question.
Hi, this one sounds kind of scary, especially because it's permanent and there's no discussion about what happens over $15 million. Are we going to try to get more information and have something on the website?
I don't know from whom I would get it, honestly. We've tried to get more information about this one. So if there's anyone else here who's a speaker or anyone else who knows more about this, please feel free to pipe up. I really wasn't able to get a whole lot of information on this one.
And Amy, did this come from the county commissioners? Because
Yes.
Really, that makes it even worse.
This is referred by the county commissioners. I mean, this is just a little bit of scuttlebutt, but from what I understand, there's been a little bit of game playing going on with this one, whereby it was a split vote, 3-2, and then there's been some disparaging of this measure by the county commissioners, even the people that voted for it, after the fact, like they're trying to step away from it. So I'm not really sure what all is going on there, to be honest.
And what was that resolution number?
If you go forward to the next slide, it's on the slide. I don't remember it off the top of my head. Oh, that was the end slide. I'm sorry. 21-330. And this is a hot link that you can get to. But it does go into more detail about how it would be spent, but they're talking about the first 15 million. I don't think they say anything about what happens after that.
And here she keeps saying it's a hot link. You cannot click it here in Zoom, but these
Right.
will be available on the website as soon as we have finished. So when we have finished, we will put these up in the archives for Second Tuesday so that you can find these and then the links will actually work.
And it is on the website under 1A also already. So you could find it in either one of those places. I don't see any other hands up. Let me check to make sure there's no okay, so Brooklyn put a link in the chat to the PDF. So you can find it there if you want it. Okay, so our next guest up is Glenn Carlson. He was born and raised in Southern Colorado Springs and graduated from Colorado College with a bachelor's in economics. He has started and successfully run several businesses in real estate, automotive, technology, and the services sector. So he's kind of a Renaissance man. And Glenn and his wife own and operate several of the most popular massage therapy clinics and salons in town. He's a former city council candidate, president of the board for Trails and Open Space Coalition, and an avid community volunteer. When not working and volunteering, you can usually find Glenn at the park with his dogs, climbing mountains or chasing golf balls all over the golf course. So welcome, Glenn. Thank you for coming. He is here to talk to us about Measure 2C.
All right, great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. So, yep, again, my name is Glenn Carlson. I'm going to be talking about the 2C, which is the City of Colorado Springs ballot issue. This was referred to the ballot by unanimous decision of City Council, actually. And so it is broadly supported across the community. And, dare I say, for obvious reasons, I think most everybody in the room can agree that, our trails, open spaces, and our parks, our natural environment that we're all lucky to live in is a big benefit to our area. And so the first slide, I just wanted to provide a little bit of history on the TOPS program. And I want to, right out of the gate, I want to make sure that everybody knows that TOPS and TOSC are two very different things. So TOPS is the sales tax initiative. TOSC is the Trails and Open Space Coalition. They are a nonprofit that advocates for, programs like this. And so it's important not to confuse the two. And so anyways, the TOPS sales tax initiative was first enacted in 1997 and then renewed in 2003 with very popular, great support usually across the board. In its 24-year existence, it's done a lot of good work, over 6,000 acres of open space, built more than 30 parks, and I think that number is actually closer to 40. And unfortunately, we've got a large backlog of parks that are in the queue, approved, ready to go, but have not been started. And then also is responsible for creating lots of trails in our region as well. The funds are administered by the city, the Parks and Recreation Department. And then there is also a TOPS working committee, which is a citizen-led volunteer committee, which can be audited, does have accountability, and they will monitor the budgets, any potential projects and purchases. I think it's important that people know that we were an early pioneer in this model, and in subsequent years, a lot of cities have followed suit and enacted programs like this of their own. That being said, some of those cities have been more aggressive about that funding, and you can see the 4 cities that I put down there, we are last by quite a bit. So we've got some work to do. Now, if you could go to the next slide for me. So that work to do is why you're seeing this initiative on your ballot this year. The current TOPS initiative is due to expire in 2025. And you would ask, well, if it's 4 years away, why would you need to put it on the ballot right now? And there's a couple different answers for that. First, it takes quite a campaign to get something like this off the ground, garner up support, and get it passed. Number one. Number two, we kind of saw this as an opportune time with no other major sales tax initiatives really on the ballot to kind of compete with and kind of take up a lot of attention or really be confrontational. And so obviously I'm advocating that we vote yes for this, but this will renew the TOPS initiative for 20 more years and increase the sales tax from 0.1 to 0.2. And so, yes, you're seeing a lot of articles lately for kind of anti-tax crusaders saying, well, they're trying to double our tax. Well, yeah, but it's 0.1 to 0.2. And so, yes, that's strong language, and yes, it's accurate, but we are far behind the curve as far as that goes. And it really equates to about 2 cents on every $10 you spend. And the average household would be on the hook for about $14 per year. And this is huge. This is honestly groundbreaking legislation for the city of Colorado Springs, parks, trails, open spaces. We had that huge backlog that I talked about. It's important to get caught up on that. And there are lots of open space and new trail opportunities already identified that we're just needing some funding and the green light to get after it. And so, as I mentioned earlier, it does have broad support. The mayor is on board with it. City council was unanimous. Many of the business leaders in our region and citizens for its obvious benefits as well. And so, the big thing is we want to get caught up to other cities and once again, kind of lead by example as far as this types of programs go and kind of bring our funding in line. And at the bottom, I'm not going to read those, but that is a very small, tiny snippet of parks, open spaces, and trails that I bet everybody in here has been on that are direct results of the top sales tax. And so if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, we've got a few questions in here. One question was that, is this county level or just city level? We should have clarified that this is a Colorado Springs measure.
Correct. So it's just city level. A great kind of follow-on comment to that, Amy, is that the city has its own general fund parks budget. The county has its own parks budget. This is in addition to that. And one of the beautiful things is that the city has agreed to do an MOE, which is a maintenance of effort. And what that means is, yes, even though you may get additional tax money by the passage of this sales tax, we are not going to subsequently decrease our general fund dollars that we allocate to parks as well. And so they've said, great, you've got additional funding, we're going to keep pounding the pavement with you.
And a follow on with that as well is, have the county commissioners weighed in at all on this question?
That's a good question. I think they kind of broadly support it, but have not been incredibly vocal. I do know there are a few county commissioners who have personally said, yes, it's a great program, great track record, accountability. But I don't know if they've passed any kind of resolution or official verbiage of support.
Another question is, if it's Colorado Springs, why are there Manitou parks included on that list? Manitou Springs, sorry.
Right, that's a great question. Looks like Ultra asked that. I don't know the what I would call the kind of technical details of that, but I do know there are. In fact, the state ballots we talked about earlier was a great kind of education piece, but I know there is some custodial use of it as well. And so, for example, Cheyenne Mountain State Park was purchased using TOPS money, but it's kind of administered alongside the city and the state together. And so I know there's kind of intergovernmental agreements between City of Manitou, City of Colorado Springs, the county, the state. And so that could be what it is, Ultra, but I don't know exactly.
So does Manitou's sales tax included in this pot, or is it just from city limits of Springs?
Just city limits of Springs. I do not know what Manitou Parks city sales tax is or their parks budget.
So we've got one more question. Would 2C help improve sidewalks throughout the city?
So yes and no. There are certainly sidewalks that are not considered parkland or for trails and open spaces, but there are a lot of sidewalks that are. And so the answer is yes and no.
Okay. I think that's all the questions we have for 2C. Hopefully I'm not missing anybody. Speak up if I am.
I will
Um,
say on Facebook, we got a message that said, thank you to Glenn for doing the work you're doing. They're thankful to see it on the ballot this year.
Oh, yeah, of course. It's a long campaign. There's a mountain of people. I'm, literally just the face in front of you guys right now, but there's a lot of people in the community that have worked on this.
Yes, thank you for your hard work and for everybody's hard work. And thank you so much for coming to speak with us tonight. We appreciate that.
Yep, of course. Glad you guys could have me.
Thanks. So our next speaker was going to be Richard Skorman, who is the Colorado Springs City Council, but unfortunately he is having technology problems and was not able to come tonight. So could you push ahead to the slide? Anthony Carlson is going to step in for him. So if you could push ahead to his, there we go. Thank you so much. So Anthony Carlson is here to talk about 2D, and he's also going to be talking about the School District 11 issue 4B. So Anthony is a community advocate and a political strategist. He's a principal at 6035 Strategies. Sorry about that. He has worked with the Harrison School District, School District 11, City of Colorado Springs, and various other civic and nonprofit organizations to advance ballot initiatives and other special projects that enhance the quality of life and success of our Colorado Springs community. As I mentioned already, he's a principal at 6035 Strategies, a communications and political consulting firm that works with the public and private entities to improve their relationships and communication with communities and constituents. Welcome, Anthony. Thank you so much for being here.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. I'm here to, Richard wishes he could be here. He's having some technology issues at his home. And he asked me to step in his stead. Richard's really been the individual in town carrying the weight for this issue. It's very near and dear to him. But issue 2D on the ballot is essentially a Tabor retention that will allow the city to keep up to $20 million of the excess in Tabor revenues to invest into wildfire mitigation programs. These programs will go into a number of things. Most notably, it'll double the size of our neighborhood shipping programs. So the programs that we can take advantage of in our own houses, in our own neighborhoods, to make sure that our own personal properties are clear of any type of forestation or vegetation that may be prone to fire and sparking a wildfire in our neighborhoods. Some of the other great things that this program will do if it's successful is it will increase our capacity of our fire department and to perform its fire mitigation programs from 2,000 acres a year up to 7,000 acres a year. It will also allow the city to catch up on 3,500 acres in backlogged fire mitigation projects. One of the great things the city is going to be doing with these funds is it's going to be, these $20 million are going to be placed into an interest-bearing account. And the city will only be able to spend up to 5% of it a year in these efforts. But that extra 5% a year, that 20 million, will let the city do all this work. But placing into that interest-bearing account will allow these funds to last almost into perpetuity, so that these dollars are available over the long run to make sure this isn't a one-time fix into our fire mitigation efforts, but is something that lasts us for forever, and being able to make sure that we're staying ahead of the fires, making sure that we're protecting our parks and trails and open spaces from the threat of wildfire. A couple examples of where fire mitigation efforts have been extremely successful in preventing property loss and loss of life is during the Waldo Canyon fire. After that, FEMA and our Colorado Springs Fire Department teamed up and they did a joint study of the Cedar Heights neighborhood, because it was largely spared from the damage of the fire. And what they discovered was that neighborhood invested only $300,000 in the fire mitigation efforts. But those $300,000 actually saved over $70 million of property loss that would have occurred if they hadn't put in that small bit of effort into fire mitigation programs in their own community. Another more recent example is, I think we all remember the Bear Creek fire that spawned up, just a little under over 11 months ago, last November. The Colorado Springs Fire Department went on record and said that the fire mitigation efforts that were done in the neighborhoods around the Bear Creek fire is actually what prevented that fire from taking off and becoming a bigger deal that would have ultimately destroyed more of our land and taken more homes, actually taken homes with it if it weren't for those mitigation efforts that community had already done on its own. So this one's an easy one. It doesn't raise taxes one penny, but what it does is it helps kind of buffer our local effects of climate change by making sure we're getting ahead of the next fire before it starts, and making sure we have the resources, just not for now, but for going forward into the future, to stay active in our local fire mitigation efforts, and making sure that we're taking care of our forest land and our park land, and keeping it free of any type of accelerants that'll start our next local fire. And so that's 2D in a nutshell. You can go to asafercoloradosprings.org and get more details about it there, or share it out on your Facebook or personal spaces if you're hoping to do so as well.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. I am not seeing any questions or hands up. I think you're right. That one's pretty straightforward. So you can go ahead and flow right into the school bond issue.
Sorry, is this a 55% in order to get it to pass? Because it's Tabor related?
This is just 50%. So it just
Okay.
needs to have 50% plus one to be successful. Yeah.
55% is for amendments to the Constitution.
All right, I think I see another question in the chat that just popped up.
Does this have a similar non-expiration as the 1A issue?
So this is a one-time request to keep dollars. So this is just asking for the city to be able to keep the excess tax revenues from last year. And so it's not into perpetuity. This is just asking for the overages from the most recent year, if the city can keep that. It's not trying to do anything forever. It's just that one-time ask. So the next time there's a Tabor overage, the city will still have to come back to the voters and ask to keep those dollars.
Okay, thanks. Okay, you can go ahead on 4B. Alter, if you could go to the next slide.
Awesome. So 4B is an initiative that our District 11 schools are placing on the ballot. And it is a tax neutral bond. So what that means is, without raising taxes, District 11 can go to market and secure $350 million in bonds to modernize our schools. District 11 is our city central district. It encompasses a lot of our downtown core, and it serves about 23,000 students. And so what makes this issue so important is the average school in District 11 is nearly 60 years old. The oldest school in the district, West Elementary / Middle School on the west side, is near 98 years old. Some of our schools still lack air conditioning. And if you've been in a school that doesn't have air conditioning, with how warm our springs and summers are getting, you know that those classrooms get pretty warm. And it's really hard for students to focus and much less learn when you're sitting in a classroom that's 90 degrees inside and while it's 95 degrees outside. One small thing that I learned a couple weeks ago is actually West Elementary, our oldest school, still doesn't even have fire sprinklers, and they have additional fire mitigation efforts they're having to go through within that school simply to be able to keep it open. An example of that is that's really been impactful during COVID, is to make sure they're staying in compliance with fire code at West. They actually have to keep all their doors closed. Their classrooms have these special doors, a little bit thicker. They have to keep those doors closed. So during COVID, especially, it's made it a lot more difficult for them to get good airflow and to keep those classrooms cooler. However, and what the main crux of this is about is, if you think about what the world looked like 60 years ago, we're in the middle of the space race. The Beatles are dominating the top 40 on the charts. Our world has changed a lot since a lot of these schools were first built. And some examples of what that means for trying to teach a modern education is, a lot of those schools were built with those old brick and concrete walls that are 12 to 18 inches thick. And District 11 is a one-to-one device school. That means every single student in the district has a computer or a tablet that they can use to connect to the internet for studying, for learning and for research. But a lot of these schools aren't built for digital connectivity. They aren't built for Wi-Fi. And so the district has to go through a lot more effort and resources to make sure that each school has the connectivity that they need to be able to keep your kids online and learning in a way that is conducive to modern learning environments. Some of the other examples of this I already touched on with the air conditioning and the fire sprinklers at West Elementary and Middle School. But if you think about, just in the last 15 years, how many industries and careers have come about simply from the invention of the smartphone and the technology advancements over the last 10 to 15 years. And you start thinking about STEM research and robotics and all these things that are really mainstream in our society today. A lot of these older schools aren't built for that or designed for that. Lab spaces in schools need to be a lot bigger, not just physically, but they also have to have taller ceilings because a lot of the, for example, in a chemistry lab, the stoves and the hoods that you need to go into those laboratories today require 13 to 15 foot ceilings. And a lot of these schools just aren't equipped for that. And the last thing, and probably the most pressing thing that makes this important, is the district has over $700 million in backlogged deferred maintenance and repair costs of their schools. And when you think about what that means is, even if you're putting in $25–30 million a year to be able to catch up on that deferred maintenance, you're still never going to be able to fully catch up on it. And what that means is dollars that are going into fixing leaky pipes, electrical outlets, windows, doors, repainting schools, is dollars that's not going into teacher salaries and programming. And so what this bond is intended to do is to let District 11 catch up on that deferred maintenance so they can start infusing more dollars into programming and teachers and students. And what that means is 16 of the district schools have been identified as needing to be completely rebuilt or remodeled. And so those schools and those facilities will, in some cases be razed completely to the ground and rebuilt. Some of them will just have the interiors completely redone. But every single school in the district is going to receive some sort of attention from this bond to make sure that they're designed to last for another generation, to make sure that they're beautiful learning spaces that inspire our kids, and that they're also fitted out with the modern amenities and tools and resources that our students need to graduate for a world of tomorrow. So the important thing to remember about this is it's not going to raise taxes one penny, but it's going to let the district go out and secure $350 million in bonds to really modernize our District 11 schools and bring them into the 21st century.
Okay, got a question for you here. Let's see. I'm not sure if this is a question. My mom works at West. This is from Glenn Carlson. And when she was hired, she had to use a filing cabinet as her desk. I certainly support 4B. Okay, that's a little story about how bad things are, I guess.
Yeah. And I just have one last thought that's not directly related to the bond, but is related to our District 11 schools that I wanted to share because it's very important. There are 3 good Democrats that are running for school board: Julie Ott, Chris Wallace, and Jen Williamson. And they are in very contested, very difficult races. And their opponents are being heavily fueled by a lot of right-wing dollars in this town who are anti-equity, who are anti-teacher, and really aren't for the kids. And so if any of you have any spare time over the next few weeks, and you have the ability to make phone calls or knock on doors, I know each of those 3 candidates will appreciate it. It's one thing to get the bond passed, but we need to make sure we have good, competent school board members who are in those seats to shepherd these dollars through and protecting our kids. Those 3 names are Julie Ott, Chris Wallace, and Jen Williamson.
They're also all on our website under school board candidates.
Yeah. Sorry to take a sidestep there to make a plug for them, but it's just important enough with everything going on across the country in education that we protect our kids in our schools here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Anthony, for coming and speaking with us today. We appreciate the information. I don't think there are any more questions out there. So we'll just move on to the wrap up now. Or I guess maybe first we'll ask, are there any questions that anybody has on any of the measures we covered so far? But let's see, okay. Brooklyn's throwing some links in there into the chat. I'm not seeing anyone piping up with questions. Okay, so we'll press on here. Just want to reiterate to everybody, we covered this earlier, but the Colorado Democratic Party Central Committee has voted, and they are all recommending no on 78, 119, and 120. The El Paso County Democratic Party is currently in the process of voting on these same measures and all the other ones we talked about tonight. So we'll be putting out recommendations on those as well, and that will be on our website by Saturday. So y'all can look for that. Next slide. So just a few plugs for the party here. And just as Anthony was saying, now is a great time to work on a campaign or donate to a campaign. We've got a lot of school board candidates out there that could use your help. If you look at our website under Election 2021 School Board, you can see a lot of candidates out there who could use a couple hours of your time or financial contribution to get them elected. And as Anthony said, this has a strong impact on the quality of the experience for our kids to get people on the school boards that believe in the democratic ideals, including, equity. Yeah, we've got a lot of, anti-CRT demonstrations going on, which is in a lot of ways really just a way of saying we don't want certain things taught in the school, being different perspectives on history or teaching about, looking at things from another person's perspective who may not be exactly the same demographic as you. So I think those are the kinds of issues that are being fought against, and we really need to have good people on the school boards to make sure that we're protecting our kids. So there's that opportunity. I also wanted to let you folks know what's going on regarding caucus next year. We're already starting to think about caucus and Assembly 2022. There was some legislation that passed last summer regarding that. And one of the things that was passed is that we can have a hybrid or virtual only caucus if our county so chooses. What we are hoping to do as a county is to deliver our most inclusive caucus and assembly that we have ever delivered. We are looking at doing a hybrid caucus so that people can attend in person or virtually. And the virtual attendance will offer increased accessibility options, such as closed captioning for the hard of hearing. We have chosen our caucus date as March 5th, which is a Saturday. A new thing this year is that the counties actually get to choose their caucus date. We can choose from the first Tuesday in March through the first Saturday in March. So we've chose to do it on a Saturday again this year, like we did last time. Another new feature this year is that the Democratic Party is not requiring us to do a candidate preference poll like we've always done in the past. We in El Paso County are going to do it. This year also, 16 and 17-year-olds can participate in caucus for the first time. Well, previously 17-year-olds could participate if they were going to be 18 by election. Now we're just saying 16 and 17-year-olds can participate. They might not be able to vote in the election, but they can still participate in caucus. And they can also be a precinct organizer. So we're hoping to get more younger folks involved. We're also hoping to spend some money to do a robust awareness campaign. In the past, we haven't been able to get the word out as much as we had hoped we could. And we're hoping to do better this year and get more communication out to people who, may not be on our Facebook page or get the blast or, read our website, but would still attend if they knew about caucus. So those are our hopes and our goals for caucus coming up this year. A couple other things that you might not know is that the county parties pay for 100% of the caucus and the assembly. We do not get funds from the state party or anybody else to pay for those. It all comes through our fundraising in our county and from donations from folks like you. Another thing that's probably going to be happening in 2022, it's looking like right now, is that CD5 is going to be wholly contained within El Paso County, which means that we are going to be responsible for the CD5 assembly as well as the county assembly. So things are getting interesting. So if you could switch to the next page. So we're introducing the fact that we are starting a fundraiser for our caucus and assembly so that we can meet all of those goals. We've put something out on our Facebook page. There's something in the blast coming out tonight. There'll be emails coming out. We would love it if you folks would consider donating to help us deliver the caucus assembly that we want to deliver. There is a link there that you can click on to donate. We also have a couple of appreciation gifts for donors. We have a mug that is a gift to you if you donate at the $25 or higher level, and a t-shirt that is our gift to you if you donate at the $100 level or higher. So these are mock-up pictures of those items for you to get an idea of what they look like. So please consider donating. We would really appreciate it. And then next slide. Can't remember what's on it. So just general updates from the party. There's our website once again. Please do come and check out the election 2021 section and share it with your family and friends. Hopefully it's very helpful. I'm the one that does that section, and I've tried to pack it with, all different kinds of information. If there's anything missing from there that you think should be there, feel free to let me know and I will get it up there. Yeah, share it with family and friends. And they don't have to be Democrats, but it is, it's a Democrat bias site, as you might guess. Let's see, what else? Ballots. You should have your ballots. They were mailed out last Friday. Hopefully you have your ballot. Some people got them on Saturday. I got mine today. If you don't have it by Friday, I would maybe check out your registration and make sure that your registration has the correct address on it. And if you look at our website under the timeline and information section, there's all kinds of information there about how do you track your ballot, what to do if you didn't get it, where the VSPCs are. You can always go and vote in person, or you can go and just get a copy of your mail ballot and take it home with you. So those are all options. Drop boxes, locations are on there also. I always recommend people put their ballot in a drop box. That way it's delivered. And the due date is November 2nd by 7 p.m. And so if you mail it, it has to have gotten there by it then. Postmarks don't count. So better safe than sorry. Drop your ballot in a drop box is my recommendation. And then we can always use more support financially with our monthly donor club. We would love it if people would like to join that and make a monthly donation. And we can always use people's time and talent. There's a link to our volunteer questionnaire if you would like to help out the party in some fashion or another. We do have many precincts that do not have precinct organizers. And even if there's 2 positions open in every precinct. So if you would like to be a precinct organizer, even if your precinct is full, you can adopt a precinct. So take on a precinct that you don't live in. Or if you know any friends or anybody who would be interested, please feel free to recruit. I think that is our last slide. So if people have lingering questions or they want to discuss something else, there are a bunch of other measures that we did not cover on the ballot, most of them pretty local. They are all on the website. Tried to include as much information about them as we could. The more local they are, the harder the information is to find. But we have of Tom here who did a bunch of research on this, and some of that comes from the research that he did, which I very much appreciate, because I know it's hard to track some of this stuff down. Definitely. How do you pronounce your last name, Tom? Is it Mowell?
Yeah, that works. I pronounce it Mowell. The vowel's probably closer to the original German.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time that you put in researching those things. And let's see, I've got a question. What does a precinct organizer do and what is the time commitment? There is on our website a description of what a precinct organizer does, but in a nutshell, typically what the precinct organizer does is contact the voters in their precinct, typically the Democrats. Sometimes we also include left-leaning unaffiliateds or even all unaffiliateds, depending on the ambition of the precinct organizer. So typically what it includes is contacting voters, letting them know an election is coming, make sure they know where to get the information they need. We generally focus on get out the vote as opposed to supporting a particular candidate. Our view is that, is the more Democrats to vote, the better we do. The more we get the vote out, the better it is for us. So that's the primary focus. The time commitment can really vary. There's a broad range of things you can do, but minimally, it's generally around election time. And there's some training for learning how to use various tools like Van, which is the software that we use. But there's precinct organizers that don't take that route. And you can, get paper lists from the county as opposed to using the software. So it's generally not a huge time commitment, especially in the off year, although towards election, it can be, 5-10 hours a week, maybe towards the end there when things are really busy. Also, precinct organizers are members of our central committee. So you would attend central committee meetings. There's typically no more than 2 a year. And then vote on, you get a chance to vote on the other members, on the officers of the party. You get a chance to vote on what we endorse for the ballot. And those sorts of things. So hopefully that answered your question. If you want more detail, I'd be more than happy to talk more. I'm gonna put my email address in the chat. So if anybody has more questions or has any input on the website or anything else you want to share with the party, feel free to send me an email. I would be happy to get your input.
And if anybody's interested in precinct organizer stuff, we could open a breakout room during the open house and answer questions in there too.
Okay, well, I think that's it. I'm not seeing any more questions or hands up or anything like that. So I think we're going to wrap it up.